everybody, it's John here again. It is February the 15th, and as you saw at the beginning there, it's not very nice outside. Here in southern Illinois, it's about maybe 11 degrees out with a wind chill below zero, and we're supposed to get maybe 8 to 12 inches of snow here. It's not something we've been used to for the past few years, but this whole week looks like it's going to be pretty rough outside. So what I'd like to do is show you what I've been doing the last few weeks. This is the 5th hive I built, but before I go through it, I'll show you what I filmed the other day of the 3 current hives that I'm using. The first hive I built was by Phil Chandler on biobees.com, and as you can see, the front entrance is, when I first designed it, where there's 3 small holes in the middle there of the hive, but when I added a thicker board on the side, I put 2 holes at the bottom and 1 at the top. So that was my first hive, and it worked pretty good, but then I decided the second year I would try something a little different. And this here is my beehive, and it came off of Bee Guardian backyardhive.com. And as you can see, this one here has the end entrances. Currently there, of course, I've got corks in them. And at the bottom there, you'll see a little white thing. I put that in there. It still allows the bees to come in and out, but it keeps the mice out if they can get in there. So this hive here is just a little bit longer with the entrances on the end. And then over here is my C hive, the ones I built last year. And I went with the concept of side entrances again, and I came up with this particular design, and that's what I'm going to show you. My newest hive here is pretty similar to the C hive that you saw out there. Basically it's the same size, and there's just a little bit of difference in the entrance holes here that I designed. I'm not really going to give you a lot of dimensions on exactly how to build this hive. Like I say, there's so many plans out there, and you need to build the hive and design what fits you the best. So what I'm going to show you is just kind of general of everything, and maybe you can use some of it to help you. Like I've said in the past, if you talk to 10 beekeepers, each beekeeper might give you the best idea to do, but they're all going to probably be a little different. So you do have to kind of do what works best for you and in your beekeeping adventures. So I'd like to start out here and say the entrances, again, is some of the biggest differences I've done. I have decided to go to the side entrances on this here hive. As you notice over here, I have a couple down at the bottom, small entrances, and then I got a top one. In the summertime, I put a top vent in. It's basically a little bitty plugs, and I've drilled 1/8-inch holes in it so that it can ventilate if it wants to. In the wintertime, of course, I fill everything with corks, anything that's not being used. And as you saw outside there, I'll usually just have 1 entrance during the wintertime. I've decided to put entrances at the top now. Sometimes they're really not necessary. Here's an entrance that, excuse me. Here's an entrance that, as you can see, the bees decided they didn't need any ventilation at the top, and they've sealed it up with propolis. So sometimes a hive I have may seal it up, sometimes they don't. It just depends the style of the hive and if they actually need upper ventilation. I just put it in there as an option, and most of the time it's either going to be plugged, or in the hot summer I might again put the ventilation holes in it. So this is the main entrance of the hive. I do add a couple more holes here on the right side of the hive, just in case for some reason I'd want to do a split maybe, or if not that, in the summertime too, I could open another entrance over here, and maybe some of the bees foraging for honey as they fill this hive up can come in here and not have to travel through the whole hive. Last year I used that a few times. But again, it's something that may not even be necessary to do, but I have it in case I would need to. Another thing I'd like to show you is, and as I open it up you can see it a little better, but inside here I have holes, vent holes in the bottom. I decided I really didn't like the idea of putting a screen across the whole bottom. The biggest thing is, I thought for keeping the hive sturdy. So what I did, I cut 3.5 inch holes in here. There's 2 here and there's 2 down here. And what I do is, there's an 1/8 inch screen in there. So I can leave this all open here. And it's got wing nuts on it that raises the little plates here up and down. But I ended up putting a 4-inch cap in there. So in the summertime, I'll fill this with a little bit of oil, some kind of a vegetable oil or whatever, mineral oil. And it's a way for me to see what's happening in the hive. And I've noticed the bees have never filled propolized over the screens, even though they're 3.5 inches. And basically, from what I've noticed, a lot of times they just use that as their garbage disposal. They'll move everything and drop it right into these little caps. And there's 2 of them here. So in the wintertime, I'll take those caps out and I close up the bottom so there's no air coming in through. And in the wintertime, I use something like this little scouring pad, I guess you'd call it. And it's got abilities that if it would by chance get moisture in there and drip down through the hole, it allows that moisture to wick out. One year I did have a little bit of moisture in the hive, so it's something I just put in there to kind of, again, let the humidity come out if necessary. So in the wintertime, again, I put that in there, close up the wing nuts, and then the whole hive is pretty well sealed airtight except for the one entrance. Next thing here, if you notice, I like to put some way to close the lid down so it doesn't ever blow open. I sometimes put a little snap thing here to hold it shut. I guess you could put a lock on it if you thought somebody was going to bother it, but I like to have that on there on the lid. I usually put some form of a locking mechanism. I've never used chains. I always come up with a metal bracket and a way to just hold the lid open solid. Again, in case the wind's blowing a little bit, it might help with that. As you see on the inside here, when I build the hive, it's had the metal, I got a galvanized metal top that I built and put on top of it. Inside, I'll use the 1/4 inch bubble wrap foil to kind of reflect the heat off the galvanized top. In the top here, you'll also see some ventilation holes. It's like an 1.25 inch ventilation hole with screen in it, 1/8 inch screen, and it's on each side of the lid here, so that in the summertime it does have ventilation through it. And also in the wintertime, for some reason, if moisture would ever get up inside here, it has a way to escape. I always like to use the double bubble wrap foil, especially in the wintertime. Sometimes I use it in the summer, but once it really gets hot, I usually take it out. On a few of my older hives, I have put 1 inch styrofoam, and I put it in here where these boards are at, so I still have ventilation in the top, but it also gives you another inch of insulation on top of the top bars here. So that's kind of how it looks like when you open it up here. As you saw back here, the legs, of course you can make them any height you want. I do like putting carriage bolts in, a couple carriage bolts for each one. And if you'll look down there, it's always nice to have a good cross brace in there to keep everything stiff whenever you're transporting it and keeping it solid there. This particular top bar hive design, I do have 26 top bars in here. These top bars are 17 inches long. They went with the Phil Chandler design. And in those, I of course always make a groove, and I put a 1/4 inch strip of, I use poplar boards that I can rip and put inside here, and that's what the bees build their comb off of course. I also like to put an edge on it so that I always put the bars back in the same position. I don't rotate them around as I'm taking them out and putting them back in, but I know everything then towards the front here of the hive is beveled, so they go back in where it's easy for me to see that. It also may help with the lid shut sometimes, that little notch there. Also, this hive has 2 follower boards. You can of course build them out of whatever you want. I just had some leftover cedar here and I made these follower boards. I do like this size because this is basically the size of the comb, just a little bit smaller, but for only being 17 inches across, and then it's about 9.5 inches deep, I think, close to that, 9 1/4. This is something that's easily handled and manipulated. Of course, you know you're never supposed to do this with a comb. It can break off. I've had it only happen twice to me now. And both times it was fresh comb and it had a lot of honey in it, or that one time it had quite a bit of brood. So I do like this size here because I think it's easier. I've seen a lot of top bars where maybe they use a 55-gallon barrel and the length of it's so big and you could get so much comb on it. I just think it would be very hard to manipulate and move, and so that's why I kind of like this size. And again, this holds 26 top bars and 2 follower boards, and there's a follower board on each side. I do like that aspect too, is because I can then open up each end of the hive and check without having to go through the whole hive from the end all the way to the entrances down here. So I can open this end if I need to and see what's happening down at the honey stores, or I can open here at the entrance and seeing what the brood's doing. Usually with a hive like this, most of my hives seem to always have about 10 to 11 bars of brood. Your first bar or 2 might be where the entrance is at. They store a lot of their pollen and they make their bee bread. And then about the next 10 or so bars, there's a lot is usually where their brood is at. And then from there on, they make honey. So there's a good possibility here with 26 bars, you might have 10 bars of brood and then 10 bars of honey. And that's usually what I save for them in the wintertime. And then anything after that, I might take 5, 6 bars of honey out of here. These little bars, they don't look that big, but they can easily hold from 4 to 5 pounds of honey on each bar. So I have the possibility of taking, I don't know, 20 to 30 pounds of honey off of this hive during the year. I do always try to make sure they have enough, so I don't want to have to feed the bees. So, like I say, it's very easy to open this end of the hive up then and just get, you know, however many bars of honey you want to do, whether it's 1 or 2 or whatever you're wanting to process. So I like the way that works, and I like the way this size of this hive is. It keeps everything I use in here. I don't have to store anything. It's easy to take a comb out and process the honey. It's easy to open another end here and not have to go through the whole hive if I don't want to, but I can easily take a few bars out here, get down and check in the brood section and see if the queen's laying, so I know how she's doing. Also, you can easily look in maybe a few bars and see if they're getting ready to swarm. So 26 bars for me seems to be enough. This is a little bit less than 4 feet long, so I'm able to use the wood, 8-foot lumber with it less waste. And the lid's right at 4 foot. So it's just a little bit bigger. If you'll notice here, let me show you this. I like to use cedar. So this is western cedar. It's 1.5 inches thick. My first hives I built, it was a 1x12 board. And these are 2x12s. But I've decided over time, instead of trying to use some form of insulation on the sides, that was too rough to do. I just ended up started using 1.5 inch boards. It gives them a little bit more insulation. So I have a feeling that it has to help. Usually they're in a tree and it's a little thicker. So the sides and the ends are 1.5 inches. Using cedar is a little bit more expensive, but I did that because longevity, and I did not have to paint the hive. I do put tung oil on the hive, a couple coats, and that's why it looks this darker color. And I've had that on my 3 hives now out there. One of them's 3 years and it seems to be doing fine. I'll probably not really have to do much to that. Again, on the top here, you'll have a 3/4 inch board, and then that bubble wrap, and then like I said, this one here, I'm going to try not putting any insulation in just to see. They really say you don't have to insulate. I mean, even Frederick Dunn in the northeastern part of the country, he doesn't, and his bees make it. So it just, again, it's your personal preference. I may not mess with that then on this hive just to see if there's any difference. But so there is a little bit of insulation on the top and on the sides, and of course in the roof here. Now let me show you a little bit what's on the inside here. Here we are inside the hive, and as you can see, there's my 3 entrance holes at the main entrance. I failed to mention I do use 1-inch holes, and then below them you can see where I've got the 3.5-inch holes and the caps underneath it with the 1/8 by 1/8 inch hardware cloth. I routed that out just a little bit so the screen recesses inside there. If a screen goes bad, I can easily pop it out and put another one in there for some reason. And then over here, of course, is the other 2 holes. I'm in the light there. But I have 2 down by the honey end and 2, of course, here by the brood section. As again, they seem to always throw a lot of their debris out, so it's easy to tell what's going on. Also here I failed to mention, but I end up using 1.5-inch top bars. I think some of the earlier designs, they made them have 1.25 inches or so, or a little bigger for the brood area, and then they changed it to 1.5 inches for the honey. I've had no trouble, so I keep everything 1.5 inches, and it's just a whole lot easier to mess with the hive. You don't have to have spacer boards to increase and so forth. I usually do have one little spacer board probably in most of my hives. In the summertime, as humidity builds up, these bars will sometimes swell a little bit. So in certain times of the year, you might have to put this last little spacer in to keep it all nice and tight. Here again, opening the hive and using this at each end here, as you can see, I can have a couple top bars empty, and at the other end also. And as the hive grows, it's easy to take out a bar, and then of course always slide the follower board back, but still leave it where you can pull out the end follower boards without much trouble. So that's the inside. I think that's about everything that I can show you. So that's it. Just my preferences on a top bar hive. Hope you maybe saw something you can use and as you design your own hive and size and how you want it to work. You can see back there, I do have a smaller version of a top bar. I don't know if you want to call it a nuke box, a swarm box, or whatever, but I mostly use it. It holds about 10 frames, and I use it whenever I want to move frames from a hive to another hive, or I have put a small colony in it at one time so that they could build up, and when I moved it away from this area, and then I brought it back. So it works good for transporting just a few frames or small hive. And that comes in pretty handy too if you have a few top bars. So, cold day, not much to do. Hope you enjoyed it, and this is going to be my 4th year keeping bees. As I've said before, it's fun to do. I hope more people get involved in having their own hobby hives, I guess I would call it, because it's, again, amazing what these bees will do.